And I'm going to demonstrate the song we were just playing, Hiding Place is a great example. We use delays. In every song you hear, there's some kind of a delay going on, so that's a critical part of a pedal board. And so I'm often asked, what do you take on, if you had to choose one pedal, what do you use? Well, if I had to use one single pedal, it'd be a delay, because most amps can get a distortion sound. So if you're stuck with just one pedal on a deserted island, that would be a good one to start with. Or if you have a few more bucks, a good pedal to start with that you could do everything with is an M9 by Line 6. So they cover all your bases for the most part in the food groups of tones. So I'm going to start with, that's what I have on this song, just to give you an example and a rundown of what I'm going into and my chaining so far in my board before we get to the part itself. Is I go into the front end of a pedal board. This is how I wire it. If you research it, there are a lot of variations. There's no hard and fast rule, but compression and distortion is typically what you would put on the front end of an amp. So I'm only going into compressor, distortion before I ever hit a volume pedal. And then I have, from there, I feed the rest of the filtering effects, the time-based effects, like delays and the reverbs. And then the last thing in my chain is a boost pedal by Creation Audio Labs that I like. So it just buffers the signal a little bit, kicks it back up in case you've had tone loss at all. So the only one I have on the front end right now is this little distortion pedal here, and it's basically a Klon clone that travels well by Electro Harmonics, the soul food. It's a really inexpensive, great little pedal for the money, and so it's got a slight overdrive. So the grit that you're hearing now is all coming from this little pedal here. So it's got enough of an overdrive. It's not saturated in distortion. It's just enough of a tone to give a clean distinction. But at full volume, if I were to go into a lead, it's got enough bite just to give it a little distinction in the tone, but I've not saturated it like this. Here would be that would be a much heavier sound if I were doing a more blues, rock, guitar solo type sound. But a lot of the tones you hear today are as simple as a nice little overdrive pedal, not too overdriven, into a delay pedal. So after I'm going through the overdrive to my volume pedal, now I'm feeding my delay, and all I've added so far is one delay sound from the M9. I have it set to a quarter note delay. I can tap tempo. On the switch here, I just click to tap into a song, so I have it set to be for Hiding Place, and it's this simple. So you hear the delay is just pretty much a straight quarter note, and that kind of delay is used all the time, but I don't have a lot of feedback on it. And to give you an example of how best to use a delay, if I really wanted this sound to, like in this solo part, it's a very pronounced sound, and so the echo is part of that tone. If I didn't want it to be as pronounced, I would back off on the feedback, to give you an example. So now the number of repeats are less, and so you're just barely hearing it. If I were soloing, I would want less of that because I wouldn't want as much of a trail. So I'll give you that example. And that's still a lot, but there's only one repeat, so there's not a complicated reverberation thing going on. If I wanted, here's how exaggerated it could be. And so that's a lot of delay, and that's where a lot of guys tend to overdo a delay pedal. So something as a simple quarter note analog delay can turn into a mess really fast in the mix of a band if I'm trying to play a rhythm part. So all those repeats and the feedback now it's a cool tone, but it gets in the way of something that's very rhythmic and where you're locking into a time. So that's just one example of using a delay.